guys, Happy New Year. So New Year's kind of this time where people reflect on the past year. A lot of people make resolutions. For those of you who don't know me well or haven't heard this before, I do not make resolutions. It's a choice I've made a long time ago, and it's something that I'm very happy about. But it doesn't mean that I don't reflect on the past year and try to figure out what I want to do, what I want to change, if there's things that I loved having from the past year, whatever. And that also means some self reflection about who you are as a person and like what you're doing in the world. And it kind of got me thinking about like the terms that we use to describe ourselves as professional musicians. Yes, professional musician is absolutely like the overarching term, but within that, like the terms that we have been using don't really reflect what we're doing. Um, and I don't really want to or know how to change this, but I just kind of wanted to talk about particularly the freelance side, because obviously that's what I really know. And the different ways that you can make an income in music, and how those are all valid, and like no matter how you create your career, and honestly whether you're paid to play music or not, your validity as a musician and as a professional musician doesn't change. So, um, like the idea of freelance versus like contracted work makes sense when you have orchestral systems that like actually have real contracts and like are paying salaries and not per service. But as many people well know, that system is changing. Probably for the worst, because also it's allowing orchestras to completely take advantage of their musicians. And it's awful to have to see my friends striking to get real change, but also, like, if you are striking against an orchestra that is trying to only pay you $20,000 a year for whatever services when it used to be a fully contracted orchestra, fair enough. Like, we have to make a living somehow, and if this orchestra is trying to completely ruin that, then that's one of the wonderful things that like the orchestra union can provide. Personally, I am not union because I don't take those gigs, and I also take a lot of non-union gigs, especially with theater. So that's a different story. We're not going to get into that. But when there were kind of this like dichotomy of like people who had orchestra jobs, people who had school jobs, and then people who put all these gigs together to create a freelance career, that term made more sense. But now there's so many different ways that people do it. And that's not to say that it wasn't the case before. I mean, like, the thing that people always talk about with Charles Ives, that he was an insurance salesman, like, yeah, he's the easy example, but it does mean that it happened at the time. But now we're seeing it even more, especially in a post 2020 world. Musicians are realizing that some level of stability is needed and that everything can fall apart at once. And as scary as that is to admit, it means that a lot of people are pulling back from like the grind of the gig work to have full-time day jobs. That was a choice that I kind of didn't make actively, but stumbled into just because of the way that my career has gone. And it's something that I'm very happy with, because personally, I mean, no one loves the grind, but there's a lot of gigs that I really just don't want to have to take. I don't particularly enjoy a lot of the like church gigs and things like that. And like weddings, funerals, that kind of stuff. It's just not my deal, as everyone who knows me knows well. I like experimental new music. I want to be on the cutting edge of what's happening. And while that stuff doesn't really pay all that much, for me it is so much more rewarding, and it's so much more worth it to have a day job that allows me to take the gigs that I absolutely want to take. Whether they pay lower than expected or lower than some of the other things that I could be seeking out, that doesn't particularly matter to me, because the income isn't the point for me necessarily. It's a great thing, and if and when I get to a situation where I'm getting more paying gigs than I can handle, then we'll talk about it. But right now, I get to say yes to things that I wouldn't otherwise if I needed the money because I have a full-time job that allows me that. It also does give me a few limitations of, I have a PTO limit. And if I'm going to, like, traveling across the country or across the world, there's only so much I can do. But I've also, been working for this company for 6.5 years. I have a lot of PTO. I've put in a lot of time and I have a lot of, like, seniority. And so, I get to do really cool things and I get to travel and I get to do some of the music that I've always wanted to do. And I don't particularly have to worry about the money side of things on the music side. Obviously, I still have to pay my bills and feed myself, and, like, I've obviously had a lot of healthcare bills over the past few years, so it's not like I don't need money in general, but I've chosen to supplement or even just rely on a different job, so that way the job that I love and the job that I want to be able to be doing is much more flexible and I can do the things I want. That being said, that's not the only option. It's not like you have to have a day job, you have to have another career or whatever it is. Teaching is the most obvious example. If you have a good studio of students, you can make quite a lot of money teaching. And I know I have a lot of friends who are doing quite well just having private studios and then also supplementing with gig work and performances. Like teaching at music schools, starting your own music school, having an adjunct like professor position at a local university or community college. There's a lot of different options of what you can do. And that's also like your stable base of income. So as the gigs come and go, things change. What a thing to think about with that is students get sick. Students go on vacation. Like, you're not always going to have the fully stable, like, I worked 80 hours in over 2 weeks. I know exactly what my pay is going to be. And that's fine. As long as you know you have a consistent, like, some level of consistency, then you can work around it. But that's something that you have to take into account. It also means, same as what I do right now, that you can turn down some of the gigs that you maybe just don't have the heart for, because you know you have a stable level of income. Means that maybe sometimes you do have to take a few that you don't really want because you had a few students go on vacation or summer break or whatever it is, but you can account for your finances. I think what most people have realized is that the scariest form is the one where you don't have any kind of stability, where you're really relying on gigs and performances to pay your bills. And don't get me wrong, I'm so jealous of people who are willing to risk that. I personally just am so scared. And so I hedge my bets maybe a little bit, and maybe I could do great that way. But personally, not something that I'm willing to risk. And if you are, more power to you, and congratulations for making that choice. And congratulations to anyone who's decided to become a professional musician, no matter how you're making your money. It's a really rewarding career, and it is very scary and very hard. And the people around you who maybe went to business school are not going to understand what you do, especially if you have a quote-unquote day job or you have another job that pays a lot of your bills. But it's super, super rewarding to be able to play music with other people again, and yeah. So, I don't know, this is just kind of a ramble about freelancing and how it doesn't really exist anymore. But the one thing I will say is I think it's becoming clearer and clearer, especially in a post-COVID world, that knowledge of technology, recording, and like having resources to be able to create things yourself outside of a school system or a like recording studio is more and more important. I will say this is a slight plug for the organization I run the social media for, Splice Institute. But they definitely 100% taught me everything I know, or at least the basis of everything I know in terms of technology. I wouldn't be doing some of the recording projects. I literally wouldn't have done 365 or anything that I have done since then if I didn't know how to record myself, if I didn't know how to use an interface and how to use a DAW and like all of this information. And if these are words that you've never heard before, fair enough, but it's time to seek it out. Splice is a super exciting opportunity. And if you are seeing this before January the 15th of 2023, the applications are open for our Summer Institute, but don't take this as you have to learn it through Splice. Take a music technology course at your university if you're in university. There's a lot of resources online that people are putting out about how to use DAWs or how to set up a home recording studio, especially in a post-2020 world. This is not brand new thought that I am putting out into the world. But yeah, I don't really want this to be like a Splice ad, but it's just something that I'm really passionate about, and I think that they're really genuinely good. So don't just like think that I made this entire video just to plug Splice. I did not. But anyway, learn how to record at minimum. If you want to learn more than that, definitely do so. Part of what I'm talking about with everything changing is this idea of self-reliance and a little bit more of home recording and home production, because a lot of places closed. A lot of people have raised their rates because they need to recoup for the times that they were closed. It's getting more and more, and inflation and, you know, all those buzzwords. So having some resources that you have control over, and yes, you had to invest in, I understand that there is a cost like there, but I don't know. Music is changing, as we all well know. We've been talking about this for years, but I think COVID kind of sped up a lot of things. There's a lot of orchestras folding, unfortunately. There's a lot of orchestras on strike. Unfortunately, there's a lot of major, like, used to be your set for life kind of orchestras that are changing their systems. And I think we're going to see more of that coming forward. So thinking about your options and, like, really realizing that being a professional musician doesn't mean making your entire income from music. And being a freelancer doesn't mean making your entire income from music is worthwhile. So yeah, I hope this was interesting. Let me know your thoughts, and like, I kind of want to hear what people think of this. But yeah, if you guys like this video, give it a like. If you're new here, subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon.